Hour 0. The moment you feel it in your stomach before your brain catches up. August 29, 2005, New Orleans. People woke up to streets that had become rivers overnight. September 20, 2017, Puerto Rico. 3.5 million people stepped outside after Hurricane Maria and understood what that silence meant. 95% of the island, dark, cell service gone, grocery stores already stripped, and the nearest meaningful help still weeks away. Those first 72 hours determined everything that followed. The decisions already made, or left unmade, played out like a script written months earlier. 11 months passed before the last Puerto Rican household got power back. 11 months. And it all began with 72 hours that most people spent waiting for someone else to fix it. Walk through it with me. Hour 1 through 6. Information collapses first. The Katrina cell network failed within hours of landfall. Towers still standing, technology still functional, but 1.3 million people trying to make calls simultaneously crushed a system built for predictable daily load. In Puerto Rico, 95% of cell towers lost power within the first day. Backup generators ran dry. A smartphone with no signal burns through battery in 8 to 12 hours. By hour 12, a significant portion of the population has lost their only connection to family, to maps, to any understanding of what is happening outside the block they are standing on. The void fills immediately with something far more dangerous than silence. Rumor. Every documented disaster shows the same pattern. Word-of-mouth accounts, partially accurate, mostly distorted, occasionally catastrophic in their misdirection, spread faster than any official broadcast and get treated as ground truth by people desperate for information. People drive toward areas that are already underwater. They shelter in place when evacuation was still possible. They wait for help that is rooting itself somewhere else entirely. The people who navigate hour 1 through 6 with clarity are the ones who decided their plan before the event. Decisions made under zero stress with full information in a quiet room months earlier, those decisions perform under pressure. Decisions made at hour 3 with no signal, standing in a darkened house trying to figure out what is happening outside. Those decisions cost people everything. Hour 6 through 12. The gas stations reveal everything. Gas pumps run on electricity. When the grid goes down, the pumps go with it. Before the grid fails, synchronized demand from an entire city destroys the distribution system. Puerto Rico, 720 of 100 gas stations ran dry within days of Maria. New Orleans, lines stretched for hours before Katrina even made landfall, as the city tried to drain its tanks into private vehicles simultaneously. The gas station line is where the psychological shift happens for most people. Standing in a line that stretches out of sight, watching the numbers on the overhead sign count down, doing the math on what happens if the car 3 ahead of you is the last one served. That is the moment abstract awareness becomes physical reality. Research on disaster psychology is precise about what happens next. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that runs long-term planning, risk assessment, consequence modeling, begins ceding control to the limbic system. Fight or flight architecture, honed across 200,000 years of human evolution, takes over the decision-making process. The person in that gas line is running on hardware that was built for immediate physical threats, and they are applying it to a situation that requires exactly the opposite: patience, information gathering, rational resource allocation. The result is visible at every gas station in every American city that has ever gone through a serious crisis. Otherwise reasonable people, acting in ways they would never recognize as their own under normal conditions. Hour 12 through 24. The grocery stores, the documented average time for a fully stocked American grocery store to reach empty under crisis demand is 72 hours. At hour 12, the store has already been running for 6 hours under panic buying pressure. Water, bread, canned goods, batteries, gone in the first wave. Medications, infant formula, pet food, cooking fuel, gone in the second. What remains by hour 24 is the third tier. The things that require preparation to use, the things that require cooking equipment that runs on power that no longer works. Grocery employees across the affected region received the same internal guidance that has been issued during every major supply disruption in modern American history. Restock timelines unknown, shipments delayed indefinitely. Assume reduced capacity for the foreseeable future. The supply chain that feeds an American city is a just-in-time system. Grocery stores carry 3 to 5 days of inventory under normal conditions. They are not warehouses, they are transit hubs, receiving multiple deliveries per week, turning product over almost as fast as it arrives. When the deliveries stop, the math is brutal and simple. 3 days, maybe 5 if the shelves were full when it started. Hour 24 through 48. Water. The part of this story that almost nobody talks about until they are living inside it. Municipal water systems depend on powered pumping stations to maintain pressure. When grid power fails, backup generators take over. Those generators run on fuel. Puerto Rico, after Maria, water service failed for 44% of the population within the first week. Boil advisories issued across multiple regions for water that looked completely normal coming out of the tap, clear and odorless, indistinguishable from safe water in every way visible to the human eye. People drank it, some got sick. The compounding factor that emergency management literature consistently underestimates is what happens to human decision-making when thirst enters the equation. The human body begins measurable cognitive decline at 2% dehydration. Decision quality degrades noticeably at 3%. By 5%, physical performance drops alongside judgment. At the moment when the decisions being made carry the highest stakes, where to go, what to do, who to trust, how to allocate remaining resources, the body is working against the person making them. The people who had water stored were not making those decisions thirsty. That difference, hydrated brain versus dehydrated brain, operating under maximum stress, is not a small advantage. It is the difference between the person who is managing the situation and the person the situation is managing. Hour 48 through 72. The real division happens. By hour 48, a city in serious crisis has separated into 2 populations. The first population is reactive. They are standing in lines that are hours long for resources that may run out before they reach the front. They are making decisions on incomplete information under physical stress with cognitive capacity already degraded by disrupted sleep, inadequate hydration, and the sustained cortisol load of 48 hours of uncertainty. They are discovering, one by one, the gaps in their situation that they had time to address and did not. The second population is managing. They are home, they have water, they have food that requires no power to eat. They have light. They have a battery-powered radio, the single most important piece of information technology in any grid-down scenario, the one system specifically designed with backup power and emergency broadcast capability. They have a phone with enough charge to receive critical communications. They are watching the same crisis unfold as everyone else. They are watching it from a position of stability rather than desperation. The psychological research on this split is unambiguous. People operating from a stable baseline make categorically better decisions than people operating from a deficit. In the context of a 72-hour crisis, the difference compounds with every passing hour. The stable person's decisions at hour 48 build on the good decisions at hour 24. The reactive person's decisions at hour 48 are constrained by every gap from hour 1 onward. The gap between them widens throughout the event. Now, what actually separates those 2 populations? Water first. 1 gallon per person per day is the documented minimum for drinking and basic sanitation. FEMA recommends 2 weeks. The practical starting point is 1 week for every person in the household, stored in food-grade containers in a cool, dark location. That single preparation eliminates the most cognitively expensive problem of the first 72 hours, and every hour that follows. A filled bathtub holds 80 to 100 gallons and takes 4 minutes to fill. A water bob is an inexpensive bladder designed specifically for bathtub storage, holding up to 100 gallons cleanly and safely. Both require one thing: the foresight to use them before the water pressure drops. Communication independent of cell infrastructure. A battery-powered or hand-crank AM/FM radio costs between $20 and $40. It receives emergency broadcast signals that remain operational when every digital system has gone dark. It requires no network, no subscription, no charging infrastructure. In Puerto Rico, after Maria, the communities that maintained access to radio information, coordinated resources, tracked aid distribution, and made informed decisions. The communities without it navigated on rumor, power independence. A portable power station in the $150 to $300 range charges a smartphone multiple times, runs LED lighting for hours, and powers a small router if internet infrastructure remains partially functional. The critical discipline that most people skip, a power source discharged to 11% when you reach for it in the dark, is not a resource. It is a false sense of security that is worse than having nothing because it removed the urgency to build a real backup. Keep it charged, test it quarterly, treat it as infrastructure, not a purchase, food that functions without power. Every item in a standard American pantry that requires a functioning stove, running water, or refrigeration is conditional food. It is food under normal conditions. It is not food in the first 72 hours of a serious disruption. Ready-to-eat canned goods, peanut butter, hard crackers, shelf-stable protein, nuts. These function without any supporting infrastructure. 2 weeks of genuinely functional food per person eliminates the grocery store line entirely. The person with 2 weeks of functional food stored at home is at home. They are not in the line, fuel in the tank. The single preparedness habit with the highest leverage to effort ratio available to any American household. Keep the tank above half, always. Fill it when it reaches half, on any ordinary shopping trip, under any ordinary conditions. That habit requires zero emergency thinking, zero special equipment, zero significant expense beyond the normal cost of fuel, and it removes the gas station from the crisis entirely. The person with a full tank at hour 0 has options. The person waiting in a 4-hour line at hour 12 is learning what it means to have run out of them. Here is what 72 hours actually is. It is the duration of the first phase. After 72 hours, FEMA begins meaningful deployment in the most accessible areas. National Guard logistics start reaching distribution points. Supply chains begin partial restoration in regions where infrastructure is intact. But 72 hours is also exactly the window in which the gap between the prepared and the unprepared reaches its maximum width. After 72 hours, aid begins arriving for the second population, the reactive one. It arrives for the first population too. The difference is that the first population does not need it to survive. They needed it or didn't, based on decisions made long before the event started. The Katrina survivors who described their experience most clearly said the same thing in different words. The storm was not the crisis. The storm was the moment you found out how your preparation measured against reality. Puerto Rico said the same thing. Every first responder account from every major American disaster says the same thing. You do not rise to the level of the emergency, you fall to the level of your preparation. The clock started a long time before hour 0. The only question worth asking right now is where your level actually is.